Hey, come see us on tour in Los Angeles, Dallas, Texas, Austin, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Get your tickets at jimmydore.com. That's where they're the most affordable. So there it is. Joseph R. Biden gave a preemptive pardon to Anthony S. Fauci.
Oh, that's great.
Guess what else Biden just preemptively pardoned? Science himself.
I was afraid science would go to prison for life, Jimmy.
I was afraid science would go to prison for life. So, by the way, this is suitable for framing, isn't it? Nothing says trust the science quite like a blanket preemptive pardon.
I mean, there's nothing I trust more than that.
Me
It's like
neither.
the Shroud of Turin to me, a blanket preemptive pardon.
And Kurt, we
It's
have to face the facts that we know, you and I both know people who's going to defend this guy Fauci no matter what is revealed because we have some effed up friends.
Yep.
And I'm not going to say they're evil, but after knowing everything that we know, the fact that they don't come around is very suspicious pharmaceutical shareholder behavior.
Is it?
This should have a quote. The quote should be, I don't always try to poison the population. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course I do.
It does look like the commercial.
Yeah.
That could be a good meme.
Yeah. By the way, the Justice Department, the January 6 people who they're politically prosecuting, the people who 99.9% of them were peaceful protesting.
Mm-hmm.
The Justice Department sent a message. This is from December 11th. The Justice
the other 1% were cops, for the record.
Yeah, that's right. The people on January 6th who were violent, most of them were cops. The Justice Department sent them, undercover. And the only person
or assets.
And the only person who shot the gun was a cop inside and killed a Navy veteran. Unarmed. By the way, all the people were unarmed. The Justice Department sent a message Wednesday to January 6 defendants. Accepting a pardon from Donald Trump is, quote, a confession of guilt for your crimes.
Well,
so if
I didn't know they were saying those kind of things.
So if he accepts that is that the same thing? Is he saying he's guilty?
I think Joy Behar was pretty clear that no, it is not the same.
This is what the Justice Department under Joe Biden said. A pardon at some unspecified date in the future would not unring the bell of conviction. Federal prosecutors argued in January 6 case before U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols. In fact, quite the opposite. The defendant would first have to accept the pardon, which necessitates a confession of guilt. So if you accept a pardon, according to the law and according to the Justice Department, it necessitates you saying, yes, I'm guilty.
What?
Did you know that?
No. That's true?
The defendant would first have to accept the pardon, which necessitates a confession of guilt.
I have never heard that in my life until just now. That's wild.
Whereas accepting a presidential pardon from Joe Biden is like winning in Las Vegas, but without the tax withholdings.
Okay, question. If it's preemptive, is there some loophole where you don't have to say you did something?
There must be, but here's a little bit more. So this is from the Supreme Court decision case, whatever. Acceptance of pardon. The court held that a pardon, while an act of grace, is not effective unless accepted by the person pardoned. Acceptance of the pardon implies an acknowledgement of guilt. That's what the Supreme Court said, Kurt.
Can I acknowledge my guilt in the future since it's a preemptive pardon?
So now these people, so now is Fauci going to acknowledge that he's so if he accepts the pardon, that means he's saying, yes, I'm guilty of a crime.
What crime? Science?
Now he also pardoned his family, Joe Biden, and he also pardoned the January 6th show trial committee.
What crime was that? Besides poor taste.
So now a lot of those people are still sitting in Congress. So if they accept a pardon while sitting in Congress, according to the Supreme Court, they're admitting that they're guilty of a crime.
So Adam Schiff didn't want to do that. That's why he didn't accept his pardon. And Liz Cheney didn't want to.
Did they not accept them?
Understand the law.
Did they not?
They didn't want to do that. What?
Did they not accept them?
Oh yeah, Schiff said no thanks. I don't need a pardon.
Oh,
and
really?
Liz Cheney the same.
Oh, okay. We're going to talk about that in another segment. So there it is. So the acceptance of a pardon implies an acknowledgement of guilt.
Of course it does. So they probably had to acknowledge guilt, and you're supposed to go, yeah, but it's like taking a plea.
And by the way, the effect of a pardon, it does not erase the fact of a crime or prevent the individual from being legally compelled to testify about it.
Oh, so, you better snitch, Fauci.
So
Come on, Rand Paul.
So they can still make Fauci testify.
Oh, he might now because he's got a pardon.
Because he's got a pardon.
So this could be good? Wait, this is crazy. Oh, please force him to pardon.
The court affirmed that the Fifth Amendment. So the Fifth Amendment, which means you don't have to self-incriminate if they ask you a question. It's not by. So if you get a pardon and you don't accept it, you cannot be compelled. You don't give up your Fifth Amendment right. You can't be compelled to testify against yourself unless you accept it. If you accept it, you've already accepted and acknowledged that you're guilty. So. The decision to underscore that a pardon is not an automatic absolution, but involves the consent of the recipient. It also highlighted that a pardon does not compel someone to forfeit their constitutional rights without their consent.
Oh, Trump, please put them on a trial where they have to testify, for God's sakes. I didn't know this was a thing. This could bring down a lot of awful stuff if they did this.
So Trump said, this is from Politico.com. Donald Trump Jr., the president-elect eldest son, responded to Fauci's news on X. He says he doesn't have to accept the pardon if he did nothing wrong. Be a man and turn it down. But he won't because everyone knows he's guilty of so much.
Of course.
Well, now be a man and testify.
So Rand Paul says if there was ever any doubt as to who bears responsibility for the COVID pandemic, Biden's pardon of Fauci forever seals the deal. As chairman of the Senate Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee, I will not rest until the entire truth of the cover-up is exposed. Fauci's pardon will only serve as an accelerant to pierce the veil of deception. Ignominious. Anthony Fauci.
Ignominious.
I'm sorry, ignominious. What does that mean? Does anybody know?
I don't fucking know.
What does ignominious mean? Deserving or causing public disgrace or shame. There you go. Anthony Fauci will go down in history as the first government scientist to be preemptively pardoned for a crime.
Hey, what do you want to bet if he goes after Fauci to make him testify? Here's my prediction. Fauci goes, this is national security. And he has to say something in his skiff, like it's a UFO. I'll bet you the national security, because that's DARPA shit that he's involved in.
Yes.
So that's his other out, is national security. That gets you out of anything.
Yes.
Torture.
It does.
Mass murder.
It does. It does get you out of anything. But if it makes anybody feel any better, Bush and Cheney tortured some folks, as Barack Obama said. And I don't remember them needing a pardon.
No, it didn't even come up, really.
Nope. And I don't want to play stereotypes here, but Fauci needs a Luigi, if you know what I'm talking about. Here's what I said. I said Fauci funded the gain-of-function research that created the COVID-19 virus that killed millions of people, according to them. He then lied about it to Congress twice. He's the biggest mass murderer in the history of mankind. There's no two ways about that. That's not hyperbole. If he funded the gain-of-function research, that's why his pardon goes back to 2014. Did you know that?
Yeah, well, I happened to look up the old article when he brought on, her name's Lieu, the scientist who's foremost in gene therapy. Remember the term gene therapy?
Yes.
That they said the vaccine? So that's how far back they plotted to say a gene therapy is a vaccine. Really, it's a team effort. He can't take all the credit. Come on.
So he's the biggest mass murderer in the history of mankind. He is. He also lied about early treatments for COVID that killed countless more people. He also experimented on orphaned black children using toxic drugs during the AIDS crisis. There's a BBC documentary about it.
Yeah, they're buried in a shallow grave in Yonkers. Didn't even test them for AIDS first. Just put the
That's right. He also tortured dogs on the regular. As the White Coat Waste Project reported, he approved research that starved beagles and then had their vocal cords removed so they couldn't howl or bark, and the beagles had their heads trapped in cages with hungry sand fleas that ate them alive.
Okay, well, in my defense, it's the only way I can achieve an erection.
The biggest mass murder in history, and all he got was a bobblehead doll.
Well, don't forget we brought Mengele to America, and he didn't pay for his crime. So, I mean, Fauci's going to pay?
Fauci is the world's worst human being ever, and the corporate media sold him to you as a savior, and America bought it because Trump!
You know, is he the worst? I think that's up to Keith Olbermann to decide.
I think it's up to Keith Olbermann. And now lifelong career criminal Joe Biden has given him a pardon, shielding him from investigation and prosecution because he was paid to by Big Pharma and the war machine, as Fauci was the head of the Pentagon's bioweapons development.
I bet they didn't pay him. They just worked him like a puppet. Biden is gone. So, like, he didn't do that.
Fauci said, by the way, Fauci is accepting this pardon because he knows he's guilty.
Yeah.
And
well,
so
that video of him lying over and over again. Evidence.
America is run by absolute criminals and is more corrupt than most people's brains can comprehend.
They cannot comprehend it, and they will think you're an apologist for our adversaries when you mention how much worse we're doing than them. Russia and China, America does worse. Just so everybody knows, I've been there and seen it, and this is years ago.
So okay? I wonder if sex freaks are going to drop the leather Hitler outfit now and switch to the freaky Fauci get up with the leather
Pinocchio,
which a leather stethoscope or something.
Yeah, it's Pinocchio stuff.
Here is
the Blue Fairy from Pinocchio. That's the Democratic Party.
Here is from right near my house, Ted Lieu, Congressman Ted Lieu. Remember what this was back in 2020 when they thought that Trump was going to do blanket pardons. He said, what 20 crimes did the allies of Donald Trump commit that would necessitate the preemptive pardons? There's no doubt the Trump administration is the most corrupt in history, and that's saying a lot when you include Nixon.
Not really.
No, not really.
Nixon? How about George H.W. Bush and his piece of shit son? How about them? Moron.
So, bioweapons. Anyway, can you even pardon someone for that? I guess if Israel can do genocide, I guess bioweapons are fine.
Yeah, things are a little loose right now with that.
So that's what Ted Lieu used to say when Trump was president.
Yeah.
What are the crimes that would even necessitate that? Here's what Glen Greenwald says. Everything Democrats and corporate media falsely claim Trump would do with the pardon power to destroy democracy and the rule of law, pardon all his family members and all his political allies, were things that Trump didn't do. They were, however, all the things that Biden did. It's remarkable. And there are people that I know personally who are out on social media like mindless, brainwashed, brain-dead zombies defending Fauci and defending Biden right now.
Of course, because they're complicit. They're complicit in the crime. So that's the Hitler wasn't that bad people are coming out.
Yep. So the fact that Fauci's pardon specifically, explicitly addresses his COVID-related offenses while being backdated to 2014, the year the gain of function ban. So Barack Obama banned gain of function because the viruses were somehow escaping the labs. Do you remember that? So he put a ban on it. And then Fauci decided, I'm going to do it anyway. And he gave them, because he doesn't work for the president, just like the FBI and the CIA don't work for the president.
President's not the chief. He's not.
He's not.
Who thinks that? He's not.
So Fauci went through a CIA cutout. Through the CIA, he funded called Echo Health Alliance. He funded the gain of function research. They didn't stop it. In China, speaks volumes as to what this is really about. That's what this is really about.
Yeah.
So it's about him lying to Congress. It's about him actually creating the virus that killed millions and millions of people.
Wow. So you know how Fauci, I was wondering how the hell we're making these viruses in China, our adversary, Well, remember how you always hear about China has a population bomb coming of old people they can't take care of? So it was in their interest as well. That's why we were invited to make bioweapons in China, because a bunch of these scumbag leaders want to clear out the old growth.
Kurt, now that is a conspiracy theory that I cannot confirm.
I didn't want to bring up the Danny Haifong, but just so you know, don't have hope in none of these people.
So it's always nice to see that nice that it's a nice raised seal right next to the signature of a train seal. So Clandestine says, holy S, Fauci's pardon also begins on January 1st, 2014, just like Hunter's. Why? Because this is when the Obama CIA State Department took over Ukraine and began gain-of-function research on bat coronaviruses in Ukraine, which Fauci spearheaded. It's about a bioweapon production. Well,
in Ukraine, I forgot the peaceful. Wait, you're telling me that's what the peaceful biolabs were doing in Ukraine?
I don't know. I can't vouch for that. I mean, that's what he says. I'm just showing you.
Victoria Nuland said those were peaceful.
Yeah, Victoria Nuland said that they weren't doing. So I can't vouch for what I'm just showing you what some people are saying on the internet. I'm not saying that's real, but that's what somebody's saying.
Maybe if any bioweapons experts could tell us the difference between a peaceful biolab and a bioweapons lab, because I can't think of one, but maybe I'm not an expert, I'm not a lesbian, as I said.
So if you really want to know, here's the closest we got to somebody on television saying the crimes that Fauci has committed, and it was a congressman, and he's also a doctor, and here's what he said.
As so many Americans, I'm deeply disappointed in your actions during a critical time in our nation's history while you were in key leadership roles as the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease and as the chief medical advisor to President Biden. Put quite simply, you failed miserably, in my opinion. Based on all we have learned during the pandemic and all that we have since learned through this committee's work, I believe your failures stem from both an effort of self-preservation, manifested by a series of lies and cover-up, and by a total failure of leadership. It was obvious to everyone that you and your organization, NIH, had a lot to lose if the American people were to discover that COVID-19 was most likely leaked from a lab in Wuhan, China, and that you, via EcoHealth Alliance and Peter Daszak, actually funded this research, and that this lab was actively and recklessly conducting gain-of-function research. As such, you did everything in your power to deflect and cover up this possibility. You even recruited others to help you in this effort. Unfortunately, this cost our country and the world valuable time that may have led to answers regarding the origin, may have blunted the spread, and would have almost certainly saved lives. While I think most of us have known all along what I just described, what I have been appalled to discover through sworn testimony to this committee is the level at which you and those that worked for you went to cover up the obvious. Just a few examples, and I know these have been touched on, but they're important for everyone to hear. Dr. Lawrence Tabak, former acting director of NIH, testified that under the generic definition that NIH did in fact fund gain-of-function research. This was based on a definition that was initially used by NIH and a definition that was abandoned and removed from the website in October of 2021 and replaced by a new, much more detailed definition with a much higher bar that you have since conveniently used to define gain-of-function testing and to deny what Dr. Tabak has since confirmed.
So Rand Paul questioned Dr. Fauci twice in Congress under oath. Did you fund gain-of-function research? And he said, no, we didn't. And what that doctor who's in Congress is revealing is that Fauci changed the definition of what it is, what gain-of-function is. So what he did wouldn't be considered it. So it was, again, just another switcheroo, sleight of hand, something he would be convicted of in front of a jury.
He also said that EcoHealth Alliance failed to properly and promptly report that their research violated the terms of the grant, something that went completely unaddressed under your watch. Dr. Moran's, your senior advisor, who you have tried today to distance yourself from, but whose large volume of emails clearly demonstrate that you had a very close and personal relationship with, and who reported to you directly, has openly bragged about how he subverted FOIA requests. I remind you that the law requires you and your former organization to comply with Freedom of Information Act requests. It is not optional. If you or your employees or your organization that you oversaw were systemically avoiding transparency and illegally hiding or destroying documents that rightfully belong to the American people, then you should be criminally charged, and they should as well. In addition, Dr. Gregory Folkers, your chief of staff, also engaged in illegal practices in which he crafted messages using symbols instead of letters to avoid FOIA exposure. In an email, April 2020, from Dr. Moran's to Peter Daszak, he says, quote, "There are things I can't say." Well, I wonder what he couldn't say. He also went on to say, quote, except Tony is aware, and I have learned there are ongoing efforts within NIH to steer through this with minimal damage to you, Peter, and colleagues, and to NIH and NIAID, end quote. And then a few days later, he said, quote, I have reason to believe that there are already efforts going on to protect you, end quote. In February of 2021, Dr. Moran wrote to Boston University scientist Gerald Kirsch saying, quote, I learned from our FOIA lady here how to make emails disappear after I'm FOIA'd, but before the search starts. So I think we are all safe, end quote.
So that's him and his criminal cabal doing criminal stuff and then bragging to each other about how they made the evidence of their crimes disappear.
Yeah. Hey, Jimmy, remember in England, that UK, whatever, he was in Parliament and he said, when do we deploy the new variant?
Remember
and
that?
RFK was on.
Yeah.
And RFK said, I don't even know what to make of that. Well, I think I know what to make of that.
Dr. Fauci, I want to know what you were being protected from and what you needed to be safe from. I'm going to go on because I have a little time here. He went on to say, quote, plus I deleted most of the earlier emails after sending to Gmail. Once again, illegal and an actual crime. Dr. Moran's noted in another email.
So they're supposed to use government emails. They weren't. He was sending it through Gmail and then deleting them.
The Hillary method.
So there wouldn't be a record. So this is all illegal. Nobody talks about any of this.
It's
Dr. weird, isn't
saying,
it?
Quote, I learned the tricks last year from an old friend, Marge Moore, who heads our FOIA office and also hates FOIAs, end quote. It is absolutely amazing to me that Dr. Moran's and Marge Moore still have jobs and taxpayers are still paying their salaries. Dr. Moran's wrote to Dr. Daszak in April of 2021, quote, P.S. I forgot to say there is no worry about FOIAs. I can either send stuff to Tony on his private email or hand it to him to work or at his house. He is too smart to let colleagues send him stuff that could cause trouble. End quote. Apparently, you neglected to surround yourself with equally smart individuals. Dr. Moran's wrote to another collaborator, Peter Hotitz, in June 2021 at Baylor College of Medicine that he had deleted all his emails related to COVID origin when, quote, the shit hit the fan, end quote. He said, quote, I feel pretty sure Tony were too. The best way to avoid FOIA hassles is to delete all emails when you learn the subject is pretty sensitive. In October 2021, Dr. Moran wrote to Peter Daszak, quote, Peter, from Tony's numerous recent comments to me and from what Francis has been vocal about over the past 5 years, we are trying to protect you. And they are protecting their own reputations as well, end quote.
What are they protecting?
Wait, not Peter Hotez.
What are they protecting?
Not the great Peter Hotez, the guy who warned me about jungle-born parasites and COVID and the new chicken virus.
And Francis Collins, the former head of the NIH.
I'll just jump ahead. The American people can rest assured that we are going to continue to pursue answers and we continue to push for full accountability from you and your colleagues despite continuing efforts to try to cover this up. Dr. Fauci, history will not be kind to you and you will be known as the man who put his personal interest before the interest of the American people, the very people that you were supposed to be protecting. Your actions, along with several others we have had before this committee, have completely eroded America's trust in our public health system and the agency that you represented for half a century. With that, I yield back.
Well said. Well, the good news is, according to Camus at News Start, he says, despite a presidential pardon, Dr. Anthony Fauci isn't out of the woods yet. State-level prosecutions could still land him behind bars. A federal pardon doesn't cover state crimes, meaning if Fauci's actions broke state laws, he could face the music in state courts. Fingers crossed that's true.
Yeah. I sure hope he doesn't commit suicide.
Peter Schiff says, the people Biden pardon can no longer use the Fifth Amendment to avoid telling the truth about what happened. Also, if they commit perjury, I don't think the Biden pardons would protect against that. So if you accept a pardon, according to Peter Schiff and according to what I read earlier, you cannot use the Fifth Amendment. But if you reject the pardon, you can still invoke the Fifth Amendment. But if you accept it, you're admitting guilt and you can be compelled to testify. Even though you can't be prosecuted, you can be compelled to testify. And if you perjure yourself in that testimony, he's saying, I think that would not be protected by a pardon. So I just want, just so you know, here's some headline. Remember they said they made Trump sound like he was a mental case and that
fish tank cleaner.
Hydroxychloroquine was fish tank cleaner and ivermectin was horse paste.
Yeah.
Well, just Google it. It comes up. This is from 2005. Chloroquine is a potent inhibitor of SARS coronavirus. What's that from? That's from the NIH website.
So not potential, potent as in we know for a fact it's potent.
That's what it sounds like.
Wow.
This is from the Virology Journal. Chloroquine is a potent inhibitor of SARS coronavirus. That's
well, science changes.
That's also 2005. This is from the National Institute of Health. Chloroquine is a potent inhibitor of SARS. There it is. That's from 2005, August 22nd.
Wow. So this was forgotten knowledge, I guess, along with what a woman is.
Chloroquine is well, it never, because there's only 6 media companies, so there wasn't a media company reporting this because they're all beholden to Big Pharma. Why does Big Pharma fund cable news programs to the tune of 70% of their budgets? Why? So they're not funding investigations. They're funding their non-investigations.
They're paying them off.
So that's right. So that's a bribe.
And the moron, mind-controlled public isn't going to bother to look at this unless you show it to them. And they probably still won't.
Chloroquine is effective in preventing the spread of SARS-CoV. There it is, in cell culture. There it is. Favorable inhibition of virus spread was observed. That's just from the headline. Here's another one from Science Direct. Chloroquine and COVID-19, a potential game changer.
What year was this? 2020.
That's from May 2020.
I hope they were struck down by Mark Zuckerberg's fact checkers.
I hope Mark Zuckerberg's fact checkers got to them. So here's Tony Fauci. Just to let you know, Tony Fauci, his crimes. There's videos of his crimes, right? So here's one. He's going to tell you what his crime is.
To the topic today is the issue of pandemic preparedness. And if there's one message that I want to leave with you today, based on my experience, and you'll see that in a moment, is that there is no question that there will be a challenge to the coming administration in the arena of infectious diseases, but also there will be a surprise outbreak.
Oh, they're telling you, and why do they always have to broadcast they're going to do it, and then they do it, and then it's a conspiracy to say they did it?
How do you know there's going to be? First of all, there's no question that the coming administration is going to have to deal with a pandemic. How do you know that? By the way, it didn't happen until his last year in office.
Yeah, the god of science knows all, I guess.
Right? All of a sudden, there's an election coming.
Hey, Peter Hotez said we're definitely getting something. He gave us a great sneak peek at the new diseases coming out.
And then he said it's going to be a surprise. How do you predict something that's a surprise? The answer is you can't do it.
Remember. That's how.
What's that?
These assholes can tell you what the crime they're going to do to your dumb fucking face and do it, and they will get away with it. What do you think that's normal? How is that normal to anyone? Well, I have some theories.
Yeah, if you ever want to start social distancing yourself, Kurt, tell the truth about Fauci to your friends.
I have done that, and it does work.
It does work.
I can attest to that. Yeah.
Believe me. Hey, have you ever caught yourself reaching for a bad habit when you're out with friends? Maybe it's the moment when you just want to fit in, but you know there's a better alternative. Well, that's Fume. The sponsor of today's podcast has created an innovative flavored air device. It's not about quitting. It's about finding a better alternative. Fume is an award-winning device that draws flavor to your mouth, satisfying your oral fixation with non-toxic, nicotine-free, and vapor-free flavors. Think of it as herbal tea compared to sticky soda. One of the coolest things about Fume is its design. Not only does it look sleek and premium, but it's also an awesome fidget tool with magnets and clicks to help calm your anxiety. My personal favorite flavor, crisp mint. Refreshing and satisfying without any of the harmful effects. Fume is perfect for those moments when you want to break away from bad habits and still have something enjoyable to reach for. Plus, with no batteries required, you'll never need to charge it. It's a guilt-free alternative that can be used anywhere. And here's a special offer just for you. Fume has already helped over 300,000 people build better habits. That's right. Try Fume today. And if you order your Journey Pack now using my code Jimmy Dore, you'll get a free Fume topper. An awesome accessory to level up your experience. Go to tryfume.com/Jimmy Dore or scan the QR code on the screen. Fume. Hey, come see us on tour in Los Angeles, Dallas, Texas, Austin, Baltimore, Atlantic City, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Get your tickets at jimmydore.com. That's where they're the most affordable.